Okay, we are live. Hello. Hello. If you've joined us for the other live chats today, thank you. We are now here with the splendiferous Katie Allen. Have you seen her TED Talk yet? Have you? If you haven't, you need to go and look it up. Katie, I could spend ages telling everybody how awesome you are, but tell us yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Tell the world.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, obviously I am awesome, but that goes without saying. Yeah. So no, I am Katie Allen. I run the imaginatively titled Katie Allen Consulting. So what I don't win for prizes in creativity, I win for sheer awesomeness. So I am a specialist diversity, equity and inclusion consultant and coach. I'm essentially on a mission to change the way that we interact with each other at work through personal development, leadership training and strategic DEI in organizations.
Oh, so okay.
I know, big goals, big hairy goals.
And where can people find out more about you, Katie? What's your website?
So my website is katieallenconsulting.com. Again, very imaginative. But most of the time I hang out on LinkedIn. So anybody who's interested, that's where most of my activity goes on. So come and see me over there. But if you head to my website, you can sign up to my newsletter as well and get weekly doses of all my awesomeness.
And it is an awesome newsletter. There it is at the bottom of the screen. So tell us, Katie, because I bang on about all your allyship work because I just find that mind-blowingly brilliant. And of course, International Women's Day is today, and they're talking about equity. I was so chuffed. There's a good word, chuffed. We don't say chuffed enough. I was so chuffed when they started talking about equity rather than equality.
Yes.
There's such a difference, and so many people get confused between the two. And I know a lot of the work that you do, all of the work that you do, has kind of equity at its heart. Yeah. Tell us about your allyship work. Tell us about your take on equity, and tell us what we all need to be doing that we're not already.
Fantastic. Okay, so essentially, and this is
I'll just go make a cuppa and leave and let you fly.
Yeah, exactly. Hang up. No, so essentially, I mean, there's a whole reason why I call myself a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist, and I specifically choose equity because it is different to equality. And the example that I'm using at the minute is, imagine if we all turn up to an event and we all get given a pair of shoes, and we all get given the same pair of shoes, and that would be equality. That would be, we all turn up, we have the same access to a pair of shoes because we have arrived and they've been given to us. But equity is someone really having a conversation with us and saying, well, what size shoes do you need? What style shoe do you want? How is that going to fit you? Are shoes even appropriate for you? Do you need something else? How do you feel about slippers or sandals, or what's going on here? How do we give you what you need to be able to, play on a level playing field? I say that I've got socks on right now. I'm not even wearing shoes. Maybe people don't want shoes. Maybe they need something else. And that's the point. It's about not just assuming that you give everybody the same thing. You give people what they need in terms of access and resources. So that's essentially
what they want.
Yeah. Ask them what they need and what they want. And when they tell you, do that. Don't go, oh, that's nice, and then do what you wanted to do anyway. Because I see that a lot too. So, and that's essentially why we talk about equity. So like you, I was really thrilled when we started talking about embracing equity, but I actually want us to go on further. I think embracing equity is a little bit, whatever today.
I love myself.
Oh, the women have a hug. So why don't we evidence equity? This is my challenge and my throwdown for everyone today. Let's evidence equity. I want to see the receipts. I want to know what you're doing to evidence equity today and tomorrow and every other day where women are coming into your spaces. And lean in, important thing, all women. Okay?
Yes.
All women. Not just cisgender white women.
Why does that get people's goats so much? The next speaker after you is Katie Neves. We've had a day of Kates and Katies today. So
I know, right?
Why does this get people's goats so much? Why are people getting so pissy? I mean, it didn't start with, but the obvious thing that started the modern day furore in recent times was the stuff about people who have periods, wasn't it? And just why and how? Can you explain to me why so many women seem to believe that trans women are erasing womanhood and femininity? Because I can't understand
that. Is the answer. I can't, because I don't understand it either. So...
Could that be because it just doesn't exist and it isn't real?
Yeah. It's just that trans women are women.
But then, and you and I are so on the page here, how is that us creating equity for the women who do have a problem with trans women?
Yeah. So but this is the thing, right? Equity is really all around. It's people who have been marginalized. Okay.
Yeah.
It's for people who have not had access. Okay. So cisgender women such as myself, we have access. Yes, we've had to fight for that access in comparison to
Of course.
cisgender men, for sure.
Yeah.
But we have access. We've got a space in the room. We're being heard. Feminism was built for us. That's a movement that was built for us, and it was reflecting for us.
Yeah.
Now we have to also make space for all women to benefit from it. We can't just like walk into a room and go, well, I'm here, sorted, done. Like, that's not how it works. It is around, how do we bring all women into the room too? How are we holding the door open and just not letting it swing back and hit them in the face when they try and enter? You know, yeah.
Have I told you I love you lately, Katie? I love you. Okay. So what about the cis thing? Because that's another thing that seems to be rattling a lot of cages. I want to say particularly on Twitter. It might just be that I'm seeing it more on Twitter. Why do so many cisgender women have an issue with being referred to as cisgender women? Why? How is that insulting?
So again, I can't speak on behalf of cisgender women who have an issue with it.
Why not, Katie? Why not?
As a cisgender woman, I don't have an issue with it. I don't have a problem with it.
It's almost like you're balanced or something.
But I can understand that there might be a train of thought that wants to protect the vision that is a woman in their mind. But again, it's their frame of reference and normalizing what we have been societally conditioned to understand. Like, everything is binary. It's this or it's this. Anything that doesn't fall into those two camps, well, that's not for us. Thank you very much. And I can't subscribe to that, and I can't get on board with it. So I respect someone's right to not want to be referred to or refer to themselves. I respect that.
Absolutely.
However, I am a cisgender white woman. So that's what I'm going to call myself. I believe all cis means is Latin. It's the opposite of trans. That's all it is.
It's not like it's a new word.
No, it's really,
again,
it really
Latin. It's not a new language.
No. And it is just a way of differentiating and making space for trans people. That's all it is. It takes nothing away from me, nothing at all.
No. Well done for handling that so beautifully, because I was being deliberately provocative just a little bit there.
Of course, yeah. I mean, but it is a topic of conversation. It's on the news. It's there. People are having this discussion, but for me, it's kind of a non-discussion, because we like to get drawn into this false debate that somehow trans people are this predatory problem, and don't leave me alone in a room with a trans woman because they're not what we think. And it's just not. That's not it. Actually, the problem are predatory people. They're the problem. Let's create a space where they're not in the room. Man, woman, whatever, doesn't matter.
The fact is,
predatory people are the problem. Not trans
all of these people saying don't put me in a space with a trans person, they've probably been in several spaces with trans people and had no idea.
I know. And also, like, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? Like, you're more likely to be assaulted in your own home, if the statistics are to be believed, by a person with a high-vis jacket walking down the street. Just being a woman at night is probably more likely to end up with you being harmed than it is sharing any proximity with a trans person. So I'm here for trans people.
Yeah. How many predatory people are going to go to the trouble of transitioning just to be able to get into a single-sex space and be predatory?
They just need a mop. They don't need to go to all that. They don't need that.
I love that. They just need a mop. Absolutely. And Ash is saying, actually, why is the narrative so one-sided in the media just now? That's probably something that we'll get into with Kate and Eves later on as well.
Sure. Leave that one for her. I don't want to speak on behalf of. Yeah.
Totally. But there were some reports coming out recently that that looked at the amount of articles that could be seen as biased against trans people that have been reported year on year, and there was a ridiculous percentage increase in the past year or so. It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, so I think we're really on the same page there. Trans women are women, and equity means for all women, and
all women and their allies
their allies. Absolutely. So who else is this for? Because I mean, we can double down on trans here because the debate is out there, and that's where the conversation took us. But of course, allyship isn't just about the genders, is it? Where else does allyship come in for you, and what are some of the conversations that you find yourself in a lot?
Yeah, I mean, essentially allyship is around every aspect of identity, and something that we have to understand that as an individual person, we have multiple aspects of our own identity, right? So, you know, we aren't any one thing, and this is what intersectionality is teaching us and has taught us, that we have to honor and respect the fact that we are our gender, our sexuality, our age, our race, our ethnicity, like our disabilities, our neurodiversity. It's everything. We are a combination of all of these things. And therefore, being an ally means we have to understand ourselves and all of these aspects of our own identity so that we can go, okay, this is me. This is my frame of reference. We'll put that to one side because I know me. That's the one thing I know with 100% certainty is what it's like to be me. Got that.
Yeah.
Now, how do I put someone else in this frame of reference? How do I expand it so I can see, well, what's going on for somebody else? And how can I show up in support of them? Because I'm good over here. You know, as a white woman, I am very well represented in many spaces. So, okay, do I need to be here? Does my voice need to be heard? Can I pass the mic to somebody else? You know, is the fact that I'm here occupying space at all a bit of a problem? Should I leave the room? Does somebody else need to be here instead of me? Like, how am I acting in service of not only for myself, but of other people as well who are different than me, who need to be heard and are not being heard? So there's the inward piece. And actually, it's really interesting this morning. So I was at an International Women's Day event this morning at Peterborough Cathedral, and it was lovely, cold, but lovely. And of the 80 people that were in the room, there were 4 men, which is a 4-fold increase on last year when there were 0 men. But so that's good. But this is it. When we were talking to the men that were there, and they were like, well, you know, we were encouraged to come. We kind of wanted to attend, but we weren't sure if it was our place. And it was like, yes, it's your place. Like, you don't need to come into the room and get up on stage and talk about your experiences as a woman, because that would be nonsense. But come into the space and listen to the experiences of the women around you. What are you learning? How are you expanding your frame of reference? And how can you then champion and do things in service of the women who are around you and in your organizations and in your families and that you're meeting generally? What is it you can learn? And I spoke to each of them afterwards, and they were so happy to have been there, because they have learned a lot. They did kind of take away a lot of insight. And one in particular was really challenged when I kind of said, well, what are your reflections? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't have anything to share. But then he went on to really have a good reflection on, like, I just know more now from listening. And I asked him, how are you going to challenge yourself as a result of what you've learned? And he was like, that's a really good question, because I want to do some thinking on that. I want to know, how am I going to challenge myself now I've got this additional knowledge? And they're the conversations we need to have. That's what's going to drive change. So for me, allyship is we can be allies by doing our own work and encouraging other people to do their work as well, by recognizing, just because we have got power and privilege in certain situations, how do we use that for the benefit of other people that aren't like us? How do we share that around, knowing that by raising some people, we raise everybody? You know, it's just how it works.
I love the point that you made there about listening, but them not needing to be up on the stage. I think one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had with you or listened to you as you were speaking about was this idea that we don't have to jump into every debate. The idea of pausing and saying, well, for us, does this need another white cisgender female voice? You know, there are so many times it's knowing when to step forward and when to step back, isn't it? I know we've had some brilliant conversations around that, but what's a piece that you could share with everyone there? How do we know when to step in and when to step back? And how do we know the difference between having an impassioned opinion that it is right to put forward or just being a keyboard warrior? How do we know which debates to step into and which to just be on the outskirts for? And that could be about race, religion, gender, sexuality, all kinds of things.
I mean, and that is a tricky one. I guess the first thing I would absolutely say is, before you open your mouth at all, do you recognize how much privilege you're going into a conversation with? Because, you know, if I'm speaking about something that is very unique to my experience, then it makes sense. Well, okay, yeah, I should step up. I'm going to open my voice. Let's do that. But if I'm in a space speaking about something, you know, if we're speaking about Islamophobia, okay, do I have a lot to contribute to this? Have I got any lived experience? No. Is this something I can confidently speak to? No. Would I be speaking on behalf of people who have experienced this? Yes. Okay, maybe I should take a call. So if you find yourself in a position where like, I might have more privilege in this space than maybe people around me, don't speak first. See where the conversation goes, see how it unfolds. And then if there's an opportunity for you to offer some insight or bring in a perspective that hasn't been considered or add value to that conversation, then sure, like offer your opinion and see how it lands and take feedback, perhaps if it doesn't land the way you wanted it to. But don't necessarily have to be the first person to make all of the comments. You can be curious, listen, maybe ask some questions to make sure you are understanding what's going on, and then start to think, now, how would I like to contribute to this? And if the answer is, I'm good just listening, perfect. Continue to listen and then talk to other people about your experiences of what you've listened to and encourage them to listen too.
I think that the point that's just really hit home for me there was the bit about taking feedback, because that's so important, isn't it? Our first speaker today was Rupinder Kaur, Asian Women in Business. I know you know Rupinder, and we were talking about this issue because again, Rupinder and I we were talking about my experiences as a member of the LGBTQIA community and her experiences as leader of Asian Women in Businesses and as a South Asian businesswoman, and talking about this element where sometimes people kind of make us the poster child of that community and how we combat that as well. And she and I were both of a similar opinion that we are both quite open to taking questions, even if somebody inadvertently says something offensive. If they're trying to learn, she and I were both saying, just ask, because at least then we can clear it up.
Yeah.
But another point you and I've spoken about before as well is it's the fear, isn't it, of saying something wrong or being met by anger or hatred or a backlash. It's what so often stops people from showing up and stepping forwards. What, if anything, can we do about that? Because equity, without a doubt, you and I have privilege, and I know that's something. I would be amazed if there was any cisgendered, particularly, but just any white person across the world who at some point, even now, does not feel comfortable with the whole idea of privilege. And we were saying today that the magic is in normalizing discomfort.
Yes.
But how do we get beyond that? Because again, we have more privilege, but the idea of equity sometimes has to come from everyone. And part of that has to be that if we want to genuinely create equity, we need to be in a position where people do feel safe to sometimes ask the questions that might seem a bit
to have the conversation, right?
How do we get past that when passions can rise so high? I don't want to say both sides, because there are more parts than sides. But when passions can be rising so high on both sides of whatever that conversation topic might be, how do we safely open those gates and ask the questions and educate ourselves? Because again, I don't believe that it's for anybody else to educate me. It's for me to recognize, there's a gap in my knowledge there, and go and research. But I still want to be in a position where I can you just explain that to me a little bit more, or signpost me?
Yeah.
How do we make that a place where we can all be together?
Yeah, I mean, and you've hit the nail on the head there as well, which is it's around what is the space that you're in when you're asking the question.
Yeah.
So, you know, if someone, for example, is posting something on social media and they're inviting debate or conversation about it, then fine, that might be a good place to say, you've said this, but I don't really understand. But if someone is giving an example of their lived experience, is your question likely to look like you are questioning their lived experience?
Yeah.
So in which case, maybe that's the point when you say, I'm just take a step back, because maybe this isn't, I'm curious now because you've said something. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. But maybe this is where I resort to Google first. Or who else can I speak to who knows me and knows that I'm coming with the intention of curiosity and wanting to do better, because that's 9 times out of 10 where we're coming from. But we also have to make enough space and awareness, I suppose, of, well, what's the impact of me asking this question? And this is definitely, when we hold privilege, something we have to ask ourselves: what is the impact of this question? Because again, if we're being invited to engage in something, the impact of my question is I'm responding to something, and this person's probably ready to have some sort of conversation. If the impact is, well, I'm just chirping up because, well, over here in my frame of reference, I don't understand what you're talking about, please explain this to me. They might be happy to do that, or they might think, sod off, I don't need to explain anything to you, Google is free, go. So it just depends on what's kind of piqued your curiosity, and where has that come from, and does it feel like the right environment to have a conversation? And lean into, if you think yes it does, and you ask a question and you're met with, hey, white woman, what are you doing on my feed asking these questions? Oh, I got that wrong. Okay. Rather than retreat completely and think, well, I shall never have any curiosity ever again, I'm not going there, stop and think, okay, what was it that elicited that response? How might I have done that differently? And then find another way to seek the information that you're trying to find, so that you can learn, okay, why did that go down the way it did? So that next time you can think, okay, now I know why that's maybe sensitive to someone who isn't like me, or why that response happened. And now maybe I could just phrase it differently. Or maybe I could say, okay, this is a space where my voice isn't needed. Maybe I'll go and take it somewhere else.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got to make a judgment call over what is the right thing to do. If we've actually done that, okay, do we say, I'm really sorry, I'll step away, go and learn some more? Or can you explain to me, maybe privately, why that was an issue, so that I can learn and not trip up again? Or do we just delete the comment and back into the bushes like that Homer Simpson gif?
Yeah. And I've done it too. I've put my foot in it. Definitely.
We all do, don't we?
Right? And there is that, there's the horrible pit of the stomach feeling, isn't it? Where you do want like the floor to open up and swallow you. And you're like, oh my God, now everybody's going to see this. But I've left those comments there.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I did fuck up. Oh,
yeah.
Are we swearing?
Yeah. Yeah. You're allowed to fucking swear. It's okay.
Yeah. I did do that. I did that. So I have to leave it there, because then other people can learn as well. And so, yes, I'm going to be the stupid cisgender person, the stupid white person. Like, okay, I'm going to be in that moment.
Yeah.
But also my reputation, like, I'm never going to have said something so terrible that it's going to result in me having to go and like move house and hide. Like, I'm never going to go down that route. So it can just be a good example for other people to just be like, yeah, don't be me in that moment with my knowledge at that time. I'm going to come back another time and I'm going to be better.
I think one of the biggest faux pas, or the most common faux pas, and you might see something differently, that I see white people making that ends up with them being in hot water, is when they try to cite an experience they've had where they have been the minority white face. And then well, I know what it's like because, and I think I've said to you before, one of my old clients really, really trip up by doing that, by talking about some of the council areas she grew up in as a child, where she really was in the minority.
Yeah.
And her intention was absolutely innocent and to be supportive. But my goodness, that was met at the same time with, I suspect there was somebody who was walking around with a hammer and looking for nails at the other side as well. And the two just did not mix well.
Yeah.
But that's a big trip up, isn't it? It's so easy to do that because, of course, even if we have been at some point in the minority white face, that does not equate our lived experience with that of a person of colour.
Yeah. And I mean, and the why behind that, right, is when we think about, well, what is racism, right? Because what we're thinking about then is, but I know how it feels to be a minority because I'm literally thinking in the context of one room. Yeah. And it's like, well, okay, yes, in the context of that room, fact. Yeah. However, what is racism? Racism is systems and structures of oppression that have over centuries and centuries benefited white people and excluded all people of color. So it's like, yeah, we can't relate to that. Like there is no experience that can equate to that. Like the society was just designed in that way and still exists in that way. So yes, we can have one experience that might, we think, liken that, but we just can't know how that feels. No. So that's, and it is, again, it's that moment of taking a step back and saying, okay, when I think about my own identity, have I really done the work to understand what that means? You know, what really, okay, yes, I recognize I'm white and someone else might be brown or black, fine, but do I know what that means?
Yeah. And that's exactly, is it the word, Katie? Does that cause confusion, do you think? Because of course it starts with race, and for people who then don't look deeply enough, they can go, well, that's about hatred towards a particular race. We do see hatred towards white people, therefore we experience racism too.
Yeah. No such thing as reverse racism. Let's just put that out there.
Totally.
There is such a thing as racial prejudice. Prejudice can be experienced by everybody. That is prejudice on the grounds of a person's race.
Yes.
Racism is the systems and structures and the way in which our society has been built. And I know this is a controversial opinion as well. I don't think it's an opinion, but it's a controversial opinion. I just think it's the way that
Could you say privilege, Katie, honestly?
But and I know that some people that's really hard to digest and to understand and come to terms with. But when you think about all of our education, you know, whose experience is it are we being taught through school? You know, is it the colonizers or the colonized? You know, like we're getting one version of history. We take that, but where we're, you know, we just see ourselves and all of our lives painted in front. You know, there it is. That's history.
Thank God for the Romans.
Right? Yeah, we learn stuff, but it's like we don't learn our shit history.
No,
you know. And I remember once going to a webinar. Now I signed up to it knowing that it was around confronting the harm that I will have caused as a white person who was a manager of black people. Yeah. So, and I wasn't at the time that I went to this webinar, but having been someone who has been the manager of black people, I was like, oh, I think this is something I need to go and understand. And it was a US based thing. And the first question they asked is, can you just drop in the chat the indigenous name of the land that you now occupy? And I was like, I'm going to participate in this from the UK. Well, we don't really have an indigenous. Oh, that's like, well, I guess we do, but how far back in history am I going? And then I was like, oh, that's not what this is about. This is my people, my ancestors are the colonizers of the lands. And I was just like, oh, this brings up a whole different thing for me, because there's people quite rightly talking about the indigenous names of their lands. And I'm like, yeah, and it's my ancestors that came over and stole all of that from you. Yeah. I'm the problem. And it's hard to hear and listen to, but it's true. That's what happened.
But that's where you get to the splitting hairs again, isn't it? Because it's my ancestors that did that, I'm the problem. But then you'll get people arguing, well, actually, no, it was my ancestors that was the problem, and I can't be held accountable for the wrongs of the past.
True, so but also we have to acknowledge that happened.
Yes,
that's the difference, isn't it? We can't just like put our fingers in our ears and say it wasn't me.
No. Wasn't me. It was great. Wasn't me. Uncle Ethelred.
Exactly. But it happened, and there has been no reparation. There's been no restoration, no acknowledgement of the time that's passed, of the impact of that.
Yeah.
So now it's like, well, I have to say, okay, yeah, that did happen. That is a thing. How do I feel about that? How does that change the way I view things? Oh, immensely, it turns out.
Yeah. Well, what do we do about that, and how do we approach that? Because I'm sure there will be people watching this either on replay or on live who will be sitting there thinking exactly that. How much longer am I going to have to be beaten over the head because of the idea of somebody with the same colour skin as mine generations ago, who I may or may not have a genetic link to, that did something wrong?
Yeah, but we're talking about equity, right? We're talking about equity. This is the whole purpose of this conversation. It's equity. Totally. So until steps have been taken that have reversed all of the harm that has been caused and equity has been achieved,
Can that
So
actually
how
be
about
done?
we stop
How
there?
do you reverse years and years and years of,
Yeah.
of terrible, abhorrent treatment to people with different coloured skin than our own? How
Yeah.
can that possibly be reversed and put right?
Yeah. And I guess it will happen at the same time as the trauma that their bodies still live. When that finishes, then it can stop. How about that? And I know it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to think about. It's hard to sit with. But honestly, that I believe that is the level of reflection and thought that we have to put into solutions. We don't have to continue to apologize, or like, I can't own those actions, but
there's a difference though, isn't there, between understanding and acceptance and present day blame, I guess. I don't know how else to put that.
But I can own the result of those actions. I can own how I choose to think about these things, and I can own how I want history to be talked about in the future from now. Like, I can do that now. I want the future generations of everybody's families not to have to be having these conversations now. So like, in however many generations it's going to take, I don't want this to be the conversation. So I want to do the work now so they don't have to.
And I think one of the points for me in this is that that's the wrong way to say it. In some ways, it doesn't matter whether we can achieve that aim before the sun explodes and takes us all out. That is still not an excuse for not putting the work in and doing our damnedest to try.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because when we think about, like, who is it ultimately that has benefited from all of this? Because if we come back to, the people who did grow up on council estates, and people, and we'll talk about white people specifically who have had those experiences, they've not benefited either. Right, they've not won. I mean, they haven't had the same disadvantage, but they've also not won. It is a very small percentage of the human population that wins.
Yeah.
Like, so we need to undo all of this. The whole system is broken because nobody wins. So undo it, all of it.
This is also, isn't it, though, where the meaning of words can get lost. In the same way earlier, I think that where I was saying that I think for a lot of people there is misunderstanding about the word racism, and they don't understand that flip between racism and racial hatred and racial privilege.
Yeah.
It's the same with privilege, isn't it? Where people who, I know years ago, before I'd taken the time to educate myself, when I remember the privilege words first starting to float up, I'm talking decades ago, feeling quite indignant. Well, hold on, what have I got? At the time I've got debt up to my eyeballs. I've got loads and loads of stress. How I don't feel very privileged.
Yeah.
So again, it's the word.
Yeah.
And that it's bigger than that, because then we get into the the all lives matters debate as well, don't we? But so often, people just look at the construct of the word that's being used, but they don't go beneath it.
What do we mean? Like, what is it we're trying to capture with this word? And it's interesting, like the co-opting of language. Like we're talking there, like, all lives matter, this whole war on woke or whatever that's going on right now. The terminology is being co-opted for a reason. It's because the people who do benefit from the current systems that are in place don't want everybody to go, hang on a minute, that's a good point, maybe we should think about that, because that jeopardizes the power that they hold. And this is where we're talking about, the very small percentage of people that genuinely do control all the power. And they have to give something up then, don't they, where in benefit of everybody. So it's in their benefit to say, but we can't, when we talk about racism, the bad racists, that's those people over there, they're the bad people. So if you're not doing that, you're good. And it's like, we go, phew, brilliant, I'm not saying those words and I'm not doing those things, I'm a good person. And we get to hold on to that, rather than thinking it's not about that binary, am I good or am I bad? Like, I have to acknowledge I can still strive to always be a kind person and to do my best, and I still benefit from racism. Like, I do, because I have white skin. So it's, I can try my best to be inclusive, but I live in a society where I benefit from ableism, because the world was designed so that I, with my level of ability, can navigate, because there's nothing wrong with a person's body. It's only the environment that they're trying to navigate that causes the barriers. And the world is built for me, so I navigate it perfectly. That's fine. So it's about being able to change our language to understand it. It doesn't make me a bad person to benefit from these systems, but I have to know and acknowledge that I do benefit from them.
And that word again, benefit, that's going to pull triggers, but it's true. It absolutely is.
You're not disadvantaged. Take your pick. It's sort of.
I'm sure we'll get people backing against that though, because again, disadvantaged. Well, yes, I am. This, and it's again, and it comes across as trying to compete, doesn't it? On trying to be on the same level, where in fact it's just it's deep internalized discomfort coming out in a way that before it's been fully processed.
And it doesn't mean that the disadvantage, the oppression that they have experienced doesn't exist, because it does. Because oppression exists for many and all people in one form or another, but it just means they have not also had the additional oppression because of this color of their skin, or because of whatever else it is that we might be talking about. So that's where we get into that whataboutery, isn't it? Well, what about me, and what about this situation? And it's like, but that's not what we're talking about.
We're talking absolutely about valid. However,
and then when we're talking about, if we talk about classism, then have at it. That impacts you. You do it. You tell us what it's like, because you get it. It's your turn. Like,
classes don't exist anymore, and we've got a brown prime minister. Therefore, But then you dissect that a little bit more. So I could talk to you all day about this. What do people need to do? If you could wave a magic wand and download some new instruction manual into everybody's brain tomorrow, what can we all be working on?
I mean, because in all honesty, sadly, the solution is never going to be that simple. No. For me, where we really need to be beginning is, as individuals, let's start thinking about our own identity. Like, I talk about the me and the us and the we. So do the me work. Who am I? What are the areas of my identity that put me ahead of the pack or maybe hold me back? And how do I know about that? And where do I see these, benefits and disadvantages showing up? Do the work. And then pay attention to the groups, the us, that you surround yourself with. If you are constantly talking into an echo chamber and only hearing your own thoughts reflected back to you, that's all you're going to know. You're going to put that into your social media. You're going to put that, and you're just going to hear all the stuff that you already know to be true. And this is one of my criticisms, usually, of International Women's Day. Bring a group of women together. We're all straight, white, cisgendered women talking about the problems experienced by straight, white, cisgendered women. And we all cheer because we all get it. And we walk away and fuck all changes. Yeah. So that's not what we need. We need all women. So think about who are in the groups that you socialize with. Who is it that you surround yourself with at work? How are you understanding the differences that exist? Because when we can understand who we are ourselves and who we are as part of our us group, then we can start thinking about, okay, how do we now put that to one side and work in benefit of all people? So us and the people who are not like us. So a we group. How do we create change for everybody? But that's not something you can't just download it or pick it up by osmosis. You have to do the work, because if we're not doing the work, we do fall back into those defensive patterns. It's really easy to then say, this feels a bit uncomfortable. I think I'll put that book down. Oh, that podcast got me a little bit angry. I don't think I'm going to go back and listen to that. Oh, that's challenging my beliefs. Yeah.
That's a really important point though, isn't it? Because so what if it makes you a bit angry? It's okay if something makes you a little bit angry. Yeah. Because that's the gateway to understanding. If we can go through that, what's beyond the anger? If we just sit in the anger and go, I'm not doing that anymore. What's beyond that? How do we move through it?
Yeah, and that's it. You have to feel it, because it's a real feeling. It is your valid feeling. Let it in, And yeah, and ask yourself, so what is it about this that is making me angry? It's a little bit self-coaching, isn't it? What is it that made me have that reaction? Where do I feel that? Like, what part of me is it that doesn't like that? And understand that about yourself. And then, okay, then go back and have another listen and say, well, do I feel it now? And how can I move through that? Like, who can I talk to? What conversations do I need to have that might help me unpick some of this a little bit?
Yeah. It's triggers again, isn't it? And we've become so trigger averse. And, you know, we'll sometimes hear people getting very, very angry at somebody for triggering them. Yeah. But for me, we could meet triggers depending on what you've been through. You know, dandelion could be triggering. I'm being deliberately flippant again, because it depends what we've been through and what our experiences are.
Yeah.
But if we keep just being angry at the trigger and expecting people to enable you to avoid the trigger, then we never work with it. For me now, if I notice that I'm getting triggered, I'll go, oh, that's interesting. And I've been trying, most of the time successfully, trying to condition myself to being grateful for the trigger, because that shows me that there's something in there to work on. And if we can be grateful for the trigger and go, oh, that's interesting. What is that? Where is that? Where does that come from? Instead of, you triggered me. Then again, we can learn and grow far more.
Yeah. And having that self-compassion and kindness for yourself to allow you to feel it and allow it to, because that's the other thing. We can get a little bit like, oh, I don't like that, or get rid of that, pretend it never happened. And that doesn't change anything either. So have that kindness and compassion for yourself, and also for other people who are on their journey too, right? Because everybody is going to be doing this work at different paces, in different ways, learning different things. And sometimes we are too quick to cancel people and jump on that. And it's like, if that's all we do, if we immediately react and say, oh, you said that, get out, like, no one learns anything like that. You know, if you're always getting sent out of the class, you're never getting the lesson. So, you know, we can tell the difference, can't we, right, between the people who are trying and people who are just being absolutely bloody minded about it and just want to, let's say, something provocative here. Like they can get out, go and there's another classroom for you, goodbye. But for people who want to learn and want to do the work and are happy to sit with themselves a little bit, then we have to make space for that. We have to allow that, because we would like that for ourselves, and we should allow that for other people.
I think that's so important, and it's being able to stop and to ask if you have we been the cause directly of any of that. Yes, we can talk about our ancestors, and abhorrent. We know that, which doesn't mean we should dismiss it. I'm not sure we'll ever be able to completely erase that. But in the present day as well, we are all going to fuck up at times. You know, this morning on the chat with Rupinder, we were talking about the privilege that we all have in schools, in the education system, in this country, because of the level of freedom that we perceive that we have. We look at anybody else who we perceive to not have that level of freedom, and we immediately get on our high horse about, you know, why should that person have to wear that or do this or observe this curfew, blah, blah, blah. And we assume that it's somebody else being disempowered, rather than going, well, hold on. What I see as freedom and what somebody else sees as freedom can be two very, very different ballparks. You know, there's somebody in our kind of circle who I love dearly, but who frequently goes on a real rant about women who have to wear burqas without stopping to think about their faith, their beliefs, their desires, what they want, their choice. But they don't see it as a choice, because we don't have to, therefore. But that comes back, doesn't it, to, you know, and this again gets right to the heart of the Eurocentricity of what is right and what is wrong. And that is how we have been socialized. That's how we are educated. We hear it all the time. And I even heard it in one of the comments this morning, around how, well, this country's not as progressive. And according to who? Like, by whose standards? Why is the European view of something just because centuries ago that's what was taken around the globe and they stuck a flag in it and claimed it was the way to be? Why? Well, we're talking in absolutes again, aren't we? And that's part of the issue. That the point I was going to make a moment ago is when I was chatting to Rapinda this morning, she stopped at one point. I went, "Oh, hold on a minute. Something's just hit me there, and let me see if I can unpackage that." And she hadn't, but I still don't know what it was. And I messaged her afterwards and said, "Thank you so much. If that was something that, if you do get to the bottom of that, if it was something that I said, or something that could be a learning or growth point, can you please let me know?" Yeah. And it might not have been. It might have been nothing to do with me whatsoever, which is another important point, isn't it? Don't assume it's about you.
Yeah.
But if it's a safe space, ask the question and be willing to ask. Be willing to say, "Oh shit, did I fuck up a bit there?"
Yeah.
And ask.
Yeah. Because that allows the learning and the opportunity for the apology, right? Because that's the other thing. I am well versed in how to make an apology right now, because you say things and you hear it and you're like, "Oh God, that came out."
Oh, that's straight from my dad or my grandfather or my grandmother.
I know how that sounded. I recognise why that's a problem. Let me apologise for that. And you do the apology and you do it properly and you move on.
Yes.
Done. Don't do it again. Do your learning, but get over it.
And don't go into and this was another discussion we've had a couple of times today. Intention is never an excuse. We can have the best intention and still cause the most appalling upset. And well, I didn't mean it that way. You've taken it wrong. No. It doesn't matter whether you meant it that way or not.
I apologise if you, and it's like, that's not an apology. No, I apologise for me.
Yeah, I'm really sorry if you were upset by that.
Yeah, no, you're not.
If.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I guess it might be a deliberate, "I'm really sorry if," but that's. Yeah, it depends on the circumstances. So we've got about 26 minutes over time, and I think I could talk to you all day. No, please don't. I think this is such an important discussion, and it's one we need to have more and more and more. And if I didn't yet have, we've got Sam Munslow bringing on to talk about some of the issues with male mental health and how we as women need to be more aware of that. We've got Katie Neves after that. And then we've got our meditation where Aquila Hope is doing a meditation. I'm winking because I'd asked Katie to do one and she chickened out. Actually, no, she didn't. There was a prime example of her going, that could be really great for me, and then stepping back and going, "But is it my ball camp? Is it?" Prime example.
Yeah, I was like, that'd be super. It would be like super fun, but I'm not. That's not my jam. It's not what I do, and I wouldn't add the value that someone else would.
We'll get you there if you want to. I think you would, but anyway,
give us a drum. I'll do that instead.
We've got lots of other International Women's Days for lots of other years, and one day, Katie Allen, I'm going to drag you into the woo-woo. So, what's one message you want to leave people with? I know there's so much we could have explored here. We've gone big on kind of trans, and we've gone big on people of color. We've gone big on there's so many other areas where allyship is a thing. Gender, religion, faith. It's just so much.
The one thing I would say, because the best place for anyone to start is at your beginning. You can't start anywhere else. The only thing you know with 100% certainty is what it is like to be you. Start at your own beginning, understand your own identity, and do the work. Unpack. What does it mean to be straight, white, trans, however you identify? What does that mean to you? And then learn to just pop that to one side and explore how else that might impact other people, and take it from there. But do the you work first. Start with yourself.
Due diligence, you diligence.
You diligence. Me diligence.
Yeah. Me diligence, you diligence. You can have that. Right, Katie, thank you so much. Hang on for a second after I end the broadcast so I can just give you lots of gushing thank yous again. But thank you. Please do look up Katie. Her email address is on the little tick bar at the bottom. Please go and look
at her TED Talk.
TED Talk. You took the words right out of my mouth. Rhythm is not my thing. Just don't even go there, Taz. Look up her TED Talk. Look her up. And let's all do our best to be better wherever we are, whatever our background, whatever our heritage. Let's all just try to do better, because team human, and until we can all start talking and finding the similarities, we ain't gonna get anywhere.
And can I just say, if anyone has been particularly challenged or confused or excited by anything we've talked about, come and have a chat with me, because
same here.
I'm totally happy to, you want to unpack something or you want to learn a bit more, come and talk to me, challenge me, give me some feedback. I'm all good.
Yeah, awesome stuff. What a brilliant way to end. Thank you so much, Katie. Thanks to everyone who watched. Keep this sharing. It's important. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.